how democracy destroys society. Probably the hardest truth for people to confront, and this goes for a Christian or atheist, left or right, is that democracy destroys society. Democracy is probably the single most lauded and applauded concept that exists in modern society. Democracy is to be the answer for everything. But it's failed paradigm, and the only one that has the analytical tools to understand why and what to do is Locavors United. And this is because we understand what the original conception of God was, what he designed man for, and how the church was to be constructed. We know democracy doesn't fit in with this design. And the center or main reason why this is so is because in the church we are to be charitable, we are to be loving, we are to treat others as we would have ourselves treated. And the key element to this is that we pay our own costs, because nobody wants to pay our costs, and we don't want to pay anybody else's costs. And if we're going to do the right thing, if we're going to be ethical or rational, we need to know the cost of what we are doing. We can't decide whether A or B is the best choice unless we know what the cost of A and B are. And so we have to pay our costs. This is how we make decisions, knowing the cost and the benefit. And in economics, this is graphed through debits and credits. And this is why, to be accountable, we need to have an accounting, and accounting is done in debits and credits. But getting back to democracy, democracy throws this whole rationale out. Democracy says in a group of 5, 3 can vote to have the other 2 pay for whatever programs or initiatives the other 3 want to be put in place. This isn't ethical. It offends property rights. But what is probably more significant is that it destroys rationality. You can't think properly if you're not paying for the costs of what you decide. How can you make a decision whether A or B is good or bad, or best or worse, if you're not the one paying for it? If all you have to do is say, Joe, get me a cup of coffee, is that a good idea or bad? Joe could have been doing something else, but this isn't anything that you're paying for. It doesn't impact you. You're not accountable. So Joe can be in the middle of a surgery, but if you aren't in any way accountable for any of the costs you're creating, you can tell Joe to go get a coffee for you, even though the coffee pot might be just on the other side of the room. And it doesn't help that instead of you saying to Joe to get you a cup of coffee, that it's 5 people telling one to get the coffee, because the outcome is still the same. And in every realistic, every ethical or rational decision, it's one person making it. Because if I want to get this instead of that, that's my decision. And it's because I don't want this quite as much as that. And that's the only way choices can be made. Because if you have 5 people deciding what 2 is going to do, there's no rational way of doing it. It's just what the 5 have decided. But it's basically fairly arbitrary. There's very little objective reason why they would decide what they do, which explains why democracy basically works on emotions. It's what people get riled up about that makes them decide what the rest of the community is going to do. And this just shows you the whole irrationality of democracy and why it's actually destroying society, because society needs to be based on rational choices. People have to make rational decisions, and to do this they need to know what the cost of the decisions are, and the only way they can do this is by paying their own way. Fascism is imposing costs from outside of the community onto the community and onto the individuals that make up the community, and it's interfering with the accounting of the community. So a fascist takes the account books and changes the numbers. It transfers debits and credits according to some kind of agenda they have, but it's not. They don't have the authority really. So fascism is transferring debits and credits from account to account, but they don't have any real authority, and they don't have any real objective guideline. It's all done according to whatever social agenda they're trying to fulfill. And it is democracy of some kind that gives the fascist the authority to do this kind of random modifications of people's accounts. And eventually democracy becomes so tyrannical and so oppressive that people rise up against it. And a lot of the conflict we see around us now is basically due to one group disliking the democracy of another, and they want to be in power because they don't want the impositions that they're getting by having the other group. And so it gets to be a warfare between who gets to make the choices about who pays what. And the only solution to this is a free market in which everybody pays their own way, and only Locavores United has the tools to bring this about. Democracy cannot bring about a solution to the problems of democracy. And this is what the world has not understood. They're trying to use democracy to solve the problems that democracy is creating.